Present.
Senator Paolino.
Here.
Senator Cano.
Here.
Senator Murray.
Present.
Senator Sosnowski.
Here.
7 members, there is a quorum.
Thank you, Mr. Clerk. To start off our agenda today, while we do have a decent quorum, I'd like to first start off with the 3 House bills that are on our agenda. These are all bills that have been previously considered by the committee under their Senate form, and they're posted for consideration. I would like to ask if a committee member would make a motion on all 3 bills, House Bill 5025, 5477, and 5534. And Senator Paolino, I see, makes a motion to pass those 3 pieces of legislation. Second by Senator Sosnowski and Senator Palma. Will the clerk please call the roll?
Chairman Pearson.
Yes.
Senator DePalma.
Yes.
Senator Felag.
Yes.
Senator Paolino.
Yes.
Senator Cano.
Yes.
Senator Murray.
Yes.
Senator Sosnowski.
Yes.
7 in favor, 0 opposed.
Thank you, Mr. Clerk, and thank you to members of the committee. Next on our agenda, we are going to bring before us 2 items in the budget, both Article 5 relating to borrowing in anticipation of receipts from taxes, and also the FY21 supplemental and FY22 budgets for the Office of General Treasurer. As is typical, I know we have Director Romer here on behalf of the administration to present the budget items, and I also do know that we have General Treasurer Magaziner with us, so I want to welcome you both to the committee. Jonathan, I'll ask you maybe to make any introductory remarks, and then we could likely have the Treasurer give his point of view as well.
Absolutely. Thank you, Chairman, members of the committee. I will briefly talk about these 2 items. So starting off the article, the tax anticipation notes. So if everybody remembers, we all had to use the Disaster Emergency Funding Board last spring as the pandemic took hold, and to make sure that we had enough liquidity going forward in the upcoming fiscal years. This is, a fairly typical sort of safety net that governments use to make sure they can make it through the ups and downs of the fiscal situation in times of uncertain revenue. What I will say, though, is that at the moment our finances are in very, very good shape, mostly because of the federal money that we've brought in. But what we do have is a high degree of uncertainty. Even with all the federal money, there's quite a bit of uncertainty. And if you remember, after the Great Recession, we typically would have a TANs authorization in the budget for years after the Great Recession, just to make sure that we could take care of any issues that arose financially from a cash flow perspective. And if you remember, a TANs isn't long-term borrowing. It is just temporary, months-long borrowing within a fiscal year that is pledging to be repaid off of tax revenue that's anticipated during the fiscal year. That's all it is. So it's nothing long-term. So we did include this in the governor's budget for the year of 2020. I will say that I think it is very much belt and suspenders. At the moment, our fiscal position is very good, but with the degree of uncertainty in the fiscal crisis, we thought it was prudent. Well, I should turn it over to the treasurer for talking about the rest of the TANs before we take questions, I think, from the committee.
Sure.
Anything else you want me to cover, Treasurer? Chairman, sorry.
Thank you, Director and Treasurer Magaziner. I do want to welcome you to the Senate Committee on Finance. We appreciate having you here today. We know we have you here for both this article, your budget, and a few other bills as well. So thank you for taking some time to join us today.
No, thanks for having me. Would you like me to wait and do all of them at once, or should I just talk about the TANs one now? I'll take your direction, Chairman.
If you would like to start off on both TANs and then anything related potentially to your office's budget, that'd be perfectly fine, and then we could address some of the legislation in a little bit.
Sounds good. Well, thank you, first of all, Chairman and members of the committee, for having us today and for your consideration. For those who are new to the committee, typically what I do is I take just a couple of minutes to give you sort of an overview of what our office has been working on over the past year and what we anticipate working on in the coming year, and then how that relates to our budget. I will say the past year has been a uniquely challenging and interesting one, but as Director Warmer alluded to, we have come out of it in a strong financial position. Almost exactly a year ago, we worked together, the General Assembly leadership, the Director in his office, then Governor Raimondo and our office, worked together to convene the Disaster Emergency Funding Board and secure emergency financing to keep the state running and to keep the state paying its bills and paying our frontline workers and our vendors during the darkest days of the shutdown last year. We successfully secured $300 million worth of emergency financing at very low interest rates. Thankfully, we only needed to use a portion of that emergency funding and only for a limited period of time before federal money arrived. We also used our position as the manager of the state's bank accounts to put pressure on banks and credit unions and other SBA lenders in Rhode Island to provide federal PPP loans to Rhode Island small businesses, regardless of whether those businesses had pre-existing conditions with the banks. And we used our position as an investor in a number of large companies through the pension fund to pressure large companies to do the right thing in terms of offering proper social distancing guidelines and safety measures for their employees. Our office is organized into a couple of different departments. The largest one is the Employees Retirement System of Rhode Island, known as the State Pension Fund. I'm pleased to report that during the early days of the crisis last year, the Rhode Island Pension Fund held up better than almost any other public pension fund in the country. In fact, during the stock market decline in March and April of last year, we outperformed 98% of other public pension plans across the country in terms of investment performance, and across the full fiscal year, we outperformed 87% of other large public pension funds across the country. We ended this past year at an all-time high of nearly $9.5 billion of assets under management, despite paying out nearly $1 billion to retirees during that same period. And as a result of that strong performance, in 2021, we are able to offer a cost of living adjustment to all retirees. So all retirees will receive a cost of living adjustment this year. That's a permanent increase on their benefit amount that will take effect the month after their retirement month. Elsewhere in the office, our second biggest program, at least in terms of assets under management, is CollegeBound. As you all know, the strength of our state's economy depends on Rhode Islanders being able to get access to affordable, quality education and skills in order to get good-paying jobs. CollegeBound is Rhode Island's 529 college savings plan. It is a tax-advantaged savings plan that is designed to offer investment options for Rhode Islanders to affordably save for college or job training programs. CollegeBound currently holds a 5 out of 5 rating for savingforcollege.com, which is a national rating system that rates college savings plans nationally. And as of December of this past year, had over $5 billion and nearly 200,000 accounts. This past year, we expanded CollegeBound to cover the cost for apprenticeship programs. Apprenticeships, as you all know, are a great mechanism for people to get new training, new skills for new careers while working on the job. So for the first time ever, CollegeBound accounts, the funds in CollegeBound accounts can now be used to pay for the costs associated with apprenticeship programs. We also launched a scholarship program called the Frontline Heroes Fund that offers scholarships to the children of frontline workers who passed away from COVID-19. Our state was only able to keep running over the past year because there were brave frontline workers who put their own health and safety at risk long before there was a vaccine. Unfortunately, not all of those workers made it through the year. And so through the Frontline Heroes Fund, we are now offering scholarships of $2,500 for every child of a deceased frontline worker. The Unclaimed Property Program, which, as you all know, is my favorite part of being treasurer, reunites Rhode Islanders with their cash and assets from old bank accounts, landlords, insurance funds, and so forth. Since my administration started in 2015, we have returned nearly $73 million of missing money to nearly 100,000 Rhode Islanders. This year, we put a real focus on reuniting not just individuals, but also small businesses and nonprofit organizations with their missing money. Because it is not just individuals, but also businesses that can have unclaimed property as well. We launched a campaign earlier in the year to reunite small businesses with their unclaimed property. And in just the last 2 months have reunited over 1,000 small businesses in Rhode Island with over $1 million of unclaimed property. The final program that I'll mention, and I'm ending with this one because this is the one area where our request as an office differs slightly from the proposal in the governor's budget, is the Crime Victims Compensation Program. The Crime Victims Compensation Program is a program that helps victims of violent crimes and their family members with costs associated with being the victim of a violent act. When we think about violent crime, we naturally think about the physical and emotional trauma that can come as a result of being the victim of a violent act. But there also can be financial harm that comes from being the victim of a violent crime. The Crime Victims Compensation Program can provide up to $25,000 in relief for victims and their families. We can cover a number of things like healthcare costs that are not fully covered by insurance, crime scene cleanup. We can reimburse victims for lost wages if they have to miss time at work. And a few years working alongside many of you, we expanded the ability of the program to help with relocation. And this is an especially important part of this program now because of its relevance to helping people who are victims of domestic violence. As you all know, there are a lot of people who are caught in bad situations, unsafe situations, that they feel they cannot leave for financial reasons. And so the Crime Victims Compensation Program will now cover up to $5,000 worth of relocation costs. That can be emergency stays in hotels. It can be the down payment, the security deposit and rent on the first couple months of a new apartment. And since we expanded the ability of the Crime Victims Compensation Program to cover relocation, we have helped more than 300 Rhode Islanders, primarily victims of domestic violence, relocate to safer locations. And I am sure we have saved lives in the process. I say this is the one area where our request differs slightly from the governor's recommended budget. Let me explain it in a couple of different ways. First, it's important to understand spending out of the Crime Victims Compensation Fund has not gone up. It has been relatively flat over the last few years, and in fact, we are projecting that in the current fiscal year we'll be down slightly under budget in terms of what we're actually spending out of the program. However, we have had a challenge with revenue for the program coming in quite a bit below expectations. So the program is funded primarily from court fees and fines that are charged to offenders, And then there's a federal matching component that's based off of the prior year's state spending. With the shutdown of the courts due to COVID-19 over the past year, that revenue into the program has declined significantly. And as a result, the federal match is also on track to decline significantly next year, further compounding the problem. I'll stress again, the challenge that we have with the crime victims program from a budgetary point of view, it's not a spending problem because spending has been flat and is actually coming in a bit below budget this year. But we do have a revenue problem due largely to the closure of the courts. In order to, and again, I will just stress that this is a program that saves lives, particularly the relocation component of it, helping people get away from their abusers. This is a program that helps Rhode Islanders at their time of greatest need. So to fill the gap caused by the decline in court revenue, we estimate requiring about $470,000 in the current fiscal year, the fiscal 2020, and an additional $575,000 in the next fiscal year, fiscal 22. The governor in his recommended budget appropriated an extra $250,000 of general revenue for the fiscal 22 year, and we are certainly grateful for that enhanced support. But that still leaves us with a hole, we believe, of roughly $470,000 in the current fiscal year and $225,000 in fiscal 22. Chairman Pearson has been kind enough to put in a bill to ensure that this program receives the funding that it needs out of general revenue. We are very grateful for that. So in addition to this being my testimony on our budget article, you can also consider this my testimony in support of that bill, which is being heard shortly. Thank you, Chairman, for your support of the Crime Victims Program, and it is my hope that we can receive that funding so that we can continue to offer this vital assistance to victims of crime in Rhode Island and their families. So I ask you to take that in consideration in this budget, and also in support of, I believe it's S782, submitted by Chairman Pearson, and I thank you for that. Finally, I think Director Warmer did a very good job explaining the TANS article, so I won't spend much time on that. I'll just echo what he said earlier, which is that currently, in large part due to the federal funding that we've received, the state's cash balance is strong. Our general fund balance is currently sitting at about $600 million, which is a very healthy amount, even compared to prior years. But that being said, we're still operating in a time of great uncertainty. And so out of an abundance of caution, I agree that it's appropriate to have a TANS authorization in the fiscal 22 budget. We don't anticipate needing to use it. We hope we don't have to use it. But I think the past year has shown us how quickly things can change, and it's always good to be prepared. So with that, thank you to the committee for hearing our testimony today. Our office remains committed to working alongside you to promote economic opportunity and financial security for every Rhode Islander, and doing so in an efficient way. And I'm happy to answer any questions that you may have.
Thank you so much, Mr. Treasurer. We appreciate your testimony, both on the budget, on the article, and certainly on some of your remarks on the Crime Victims Fund. I just want to say on behalf of the committee, and I want to thank you, but also so many in your office that I know worked tirelessly and overnight, especially through the early times of the pandemic, and ensuring that the state's cash flow was healthy, and we were able to continue to meet our vendors and our employees, obligations throughout that entire time. And I know that it was a lot of turning of the cranks and some midnight oil across the team. And so I just want to thank the entire Treasury team for your work and your leadership throughout that period. In addition, I would just say, I think, continued on the pension performance. Also, I think that two of my favorite readings a year are the debt affordability study and the pension affordability study. I think those remain very important as we continue to monitor those critical areas of the state's finances, and I want to thank them for that as well. I do have a question mostly on the TANs article, and then I'll maybe kick it over to some of the members. Related to the TANs, I know the Disaster Emergency Funding Board hadn't done an authorization of the $300 million, and we still have 2 of those credit lines open. Could you talk to us a little bit about the process that you see if this proposal were to pass? Do you anticipate those credit lines remaining open? Do you intend to restructure them all with the new authorization? Or maybe talk to us a little bit about, if we were to approve this, what actions your office would take?
Yeah, absolutely. And thank you, Chairman, for the kind words. It was a scramble last year, working closely with Jonathan and his team as well, but we were able to get the job done. So we opted this past year, instead of doing traditional TANs, which are like bonds, like a traditional, like similar to the process of selling bonds, we opted instead to take out lines of credit. And we did that in part because it was faster, and in part because we liked the flexibility. Because we were operating with significant uncertainty, we asked for the authorization for $300 million from the Disaster Emergency Funding Board, but we didn't know whether we were going to need the full $300 million or 100 or 200 or 50 or 0, because things were in such great flux back in March and April of last year. So we liked the line of credit structure because of the flexibility that it offered. And while I can't predict the future, my guess is that if there was, God forbid, some sort of a second crisis next year that caused, a liquidity crunch, that we might be inclined to use a line of credit type facility again because of that flexibility. But I think we'll just have to kind of take it as it comes and see what presents itself. The authorization that you have in front of you would basically give us the flexibility to use the type of facility that we feel is most prudent, whether it is a traditional TANs issuance or a line of credit or some other type of short-term borrowing. But the line of credit was something that was new for us on Rhode Island. I don't believe we had used it before. It's something that other states do use. And I think we like the flexibility that it offers. If we have to use it again, which we don't anticipate and we hope we don't, but we hope we won't. But I think we think that that's probably the leading option if we did have to do something like that again. I don't want to speak for Jonathan, but that's our feeling.
No, certainly I'd agree.
All right. Thank you, Director. Thank you, Treasurer. Are there questions from members of the committee?
Mr. Chairman, this is Lou.
Senator Palmer.
Thank you, Chairman. Thank you, Treasurer and Director. Treasurer, with regards to the Victims Compensation Fund, so a couple comments. Do most states fund it the way we do with court proceeds? That's the first question.
Yeah, it's a good question. Many do, but it's really a mix. My feeling is that in an ideal world, I would like to see us move toward general revenue funding as opposed to court fees, just from a kind of a criminal justice reform point of view. I'm not sure that I think it's from a policy point of view, I think it's better to come from the general fund than to come from court fees. But at the end of the day, the most important thing is that the program get funded.
Okay. So appreciate that, Treasurer. I guess the follow-up question would be, since this is a one-off, if other states do the same thing we do, 5, 10, 15, and number of them, how many would you say fund it the way we do via court fees?
I'd have to get back to you on that. I bet it's more than a few. It's more than a few, but I can find out the exact number.
So I'm looking at this from the perspective of one-time money. If there's any COVID money left, and it might be, I don't know that there is or there isn't, because that got extended, or the new relief money, rather than going to general revenue, since it's for this one-off time instance, from an FY21 perspective, not FY22, I'd be more inclined to have it funded out of one-time money as opposed to the budget.
Yeah.
General revenues or wherever it comes from. And then moving forward from there, have the sustainable funding mechanisms, but like other things that manifested themselves and this was COVID related, if COVID didn't happen, people still would have been in court. The fines would have been collected. So I'd ask if we should be thinking about what other one-time, so for Director Womer, what other one-time money can we use for 21? 22 is a different story.
Yeah, if I could, Senator, I think it's a good point. The one thing I would flag is what we don't know is whether federal money, whether it was the CARES Act or the new round of stimulus, whether that would qualify for the federal match. It says in the federal policy that governs the federal matching funds, it says that the match can only be for state money. It's an open question whether federal stimulus would count as state money or not for purpose of earning that federal match. Literally, like every other state in the country, also like us, would hope that the answer is yes. And so we do have all of the states that administer these programs have a request into the Biden administration asking them if we use stimulus funds, can that qualify for a state match? We haven't gotten an answer yet. If the answer is yes, then of course I would agree that that would be the optimal solution.
Okay.
I don't.
Thank you, Treasurer.
Senator, you mentioned my name. I do have two things to add. So almost never does the federal government allow federal money to be used as federal match. It's really unfortunate. I would certainly love it, especially in the Medicaid arena, because there'd be lots of places. But as a general federal grant principle, they don't allow it. It has happened before, but it is extraordinarily rare. Second, we do not think CRF is an eligible use for this. We certainly looked at that very, very, very strongly. But the problem is really twofold. One is it's really a revenue backfill issue. It's not that it's being used for COVID response in any way, and the CRF is prohibited from being used as a revenue backfill. Now the ARP money, we haven't received guidance on that, but that is possible. That they have used the words revenue backfill. They haven't provided guidance about what that means. But I will say the other issue is not all of the revenue decline is unfortunately, or maybe unfortunately, due to COVID. There was also some actions on the part of the courts that were required by law that has changed the mix in the funding. We were able to help with that a little bit in the budget, but that was only an additional add of $80,000, not the hundreds of thousands of dollars that are necessary. Okay. So there's also some other things that are affecting the revenue of the program besides the COVID backfill.
Okay. I just appreciate us looking at what's possible. Obviously, we've looked at many things over the last year as it relates to health and human services that we thought weren't or were and weren't and were, whatever we can, but I appreciate the feedback, Director. Thank you.
Thank you, Senator Palma. Are there any other questions or comments from members of the committee? Okay. Hearing none, I'd like to conclude our hearing on both Article 5 and the fiscal 21 supplemental budgets for the General Treasurer. I would also like to ask any committee members if you have any other questions or comments on Senate Bill 782. Hearing none. All right, next on our agenda is going to be Senate Bill 781 by myself, an act relating to public utilities and carriers, duties of utilities and carriers. This is a piece of legislation that I've been able to introduce on behalf of the Treasurer and working with him in his office on related to ensuring that we continue our investments via the infrastructure bank into efficient buildings. Treasurer Magaziner, I know this is something that you've worked on significantly, and so I'd like to ask you if you'd like to make any comments on this legislation.
Thank you, Chairman, again, and thank you for introducing this bill. This pertains to a program that we started 6 years ago at the Rhode Island Infrastructure Bank called the Efficient Buildings Fund. And the goal here was really threefold. One, to put Rhode Islanders to work on green infrastructure projects. So goal number one is jobs. Goal number two is to make our state more resilient to climate change and to reduce our carbon footprint. And then goal number three is to help cities and towns save money on their energy bills. So this is a program that accomplishes all three of those things at once. It is a revolving fund that funds energy efficiency and renewable energy projects for publicly owned buildings. So think libraries, fire stations, police stations, DPW buildings. And in the 5 years since this program launched, it has funded more than $60 million worth of energy efficiency and renewable projects at cities and towns across the state. It has supported nearly 1,000 construction jobs over that time and helped cities and towns save millions of dollars on their energy costs. I could give you a long list of examples, but just for a few, the city of Pawtucket has retrofitted their city hall and their library and converted their streetlights to LEDs, funded by this program. Town of Westerly has solar panels on their DPW building and their police station, funded through this program. About a dozen different communities so far have taken advantage of the Efficient Buildings Fund, with more in the pipeline. It's also helped to finance some of the larger marquee public infrastructure projects across the state, like the new East Providence High School is partially financed by this program as well. So this program has been a great success, invested tens of millions of dollars in green infrastructure all across the state, helped cities and towns save money on their energy bills, and put people to work. The bill that you would have in front of you will ensure that this program remains sustainable well into the future. The funding for this program has not come out of the state budget. It has come out of what is called the Systems Benefit Charge, which is a charge on every National Grid ratepayer bill that is specifically earmarked for energy efficiency projects. Now, this infrastructure bank program has only taken a small portion of the revenue that is raised from that systems benefit charge. The systems benefit charge overall raises nearly $150 million of revenue a year. What this bill would do is put into practice what has already been done sort of in an ad hoc way and ensure that a small portion of that systems benefit charge revenue will continue to go to support this program at the infrastructure bank. So this bill calls on, would require that 15% of the systems benefit charge revenue go to the Efficient Buildings Fund at the infrastructure bank to help support this program to make sure that it's sustainable into the future. Again, no state budget impact at all, and this would only be a portion of revenue that is already being collected every year, some of which has already gone to supporting this program. But I think we're now 5 years in, and 5 years in, we can now say unequivocally that this program has been successful. It is meeting its mission of putting Rhode Islanders to work, making our state's carbon footprint smaller, and helping city and town taxpayers save money. And because of that success and because of that track record, a more sustainable funding solution is warranted. So with that, I'm happy to take any questions. I thank you again, Chairman, for introducing this legislation, and I thank you to the committee for your consideration.
Thank you, Treasurer, and I really appreciate your work on this, and I do agree that I think the statutory allocation will allow a lot more predictability in the program and allow the infrastructure bank to continue to increase their lending capacity on this program. As we know, there's no shortage of projects awaiting this kind of funding. So appreciate you bringing this forward and working with me on it very much. Are there any questions or comments from members of the committee for the Treasurer on this legislation? Okay. Hearing none, we do have a witness signed up. It is Jeffrey Deal, who's the Executive Director of the Rhode Island Infrastructure Bank, in support of the legislation. I'd like to take a moment at this time to welcome Jeff to the committee. Jeff, welcome to Senate Finance.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman and members of the committee. Happy to be here virtually. Hi. Thank you, Mr. Chairman. So a little bit of delay there. Yeah, I am here to testify in support of Senate Bill 781, which is provides for the direct allocation of demand-side charges, or what we call system benefit charges, to the Infrastructure Bank in order to support its programs to provide low-cost finance for clean energy projects which reduce greenhouse gas emissions and reduce the use of energy. In 2015, as you heard from General Treasurer Magaziner, the General Assembly, working with the Treasurer and then Governor Raimondo, established EBF, or the Efficient Building Fund, and directed the Infrastructure Bank to administer this program. You know, the mission was to enable municipalities to access long-term, fixed-rate, low-cost financing to fund clean energy projects, both renewables and energy efficiency. And projects financed by EBF must be cost-effective. In other words, the cost of the energy produced or saved by the projects is greater than the cost of financing the projects. In other words, these projects are net cash flow positive for our municipalities. Plus, these projects have a positive effect on the environment and climate change by reducing greenhouse gas emissions. EBF financing enables cities and towns to make the investment in clean energy projects that have a longer payback period, but produce meaningful savings and reductions in greenhouse gas emissions. The type of investments that will enable the state to reach its important and aggressive energy targets. When EBF was created, the General Assembly directed initial capital to the Infrastructure Bank of approximately $5 million. $3 million from regional greenhouse gas initiative proceeds generated for the state, and an allocation of $1.87 million of system benefit charges that are collected on behalf of the state by National Grid. The use of this capital is flexible and could support renewable energy projects, energy efficiency projects, as well as debt service reserves to support leveraging the capital in the bond markets. And since the inception, as you heard from the Treasurer, we financed almost $61 million of clean energy loans for 14 municipalities across the state, including Cumberland, Providence, Pawtucket, Warren, Warwick, and Newport. These projects have saved our cities and towns almost $83 million in reduced energy costs. This is real budget savings that our cities and towns can direct into other priorities, such as education and public safety. Many of these projects not only reduce energy use and generate clean energy, but significantly improve the healthy environment of our public buildings and schools. These projects also create support jobs, and this investment has supported, as you heard from the Treasurer, almost 1,000 21st century green jobs. Projects include senior centers, fire and police facilities, schools, public works facilities, and libraries, to just name a few. In addition, these investments have reduced energy consumption by 213,000 megawatts and greenhouse gas emissions of 150,000 metric tons of carbon. To put it in layman terms, this is equivalent to the energy and greenhouse gas emissions of over 17,000 homes. And the Infrastructure Bank not only provides low-cost, below-market financing, but we also fund energy consulting engineers whose services we provide free of charge to municipalities to help them better identify and manage clean energy upgrades. In fact, we just issued an RFP this week for a consulting engineering firm to assist municipalities in energy asset management, taking it to the next level. The service is funded by the Infrastructure Bank and does not reduce any of the capital we receive to make EBF loans. So we're helping municipalities better understand their energy needs and hopefully finance them through the EBF at a low cost. The challenge for us is that when the EBF was established, only an initial capital of slightly less than $5 million, plus a subsequent allocation of $2 million of regional greenhouse gas initiative funds from OER was allocated to the program. We were not provided with any consistent source of new capital to support lending for new projects. And as you heard from the Treasurer, the capital that was initially provided was not part of the state funds or the budget. But as a result of this initial capitalization and no subsequent source, we've been forced to enter into negotiations with National Grid to obtain additional allocations of capital from the system benefit charges collected by the utility on behalf of the state for the energy efficiency plan. We've been successful in obtaining an allocation of $5 million in each of the years from 2016 to 2019 for a total of $20 million. And this $20 million in capital allocation also has restrictions, and it can only be used for energy efficiency loans, although many of our municipalities are also looking to invest in renewable energy projects such as rooftop solar and energy storage. We've combined this capital that we received, both initially and through our negotiations with National Grid, with almost $35 million in private sector capital through bond issuance to generate the almost $61 million in loans that was referenced earlier. In late 2020, we were informed by National Grid shortly before the publication of the 2021 Energy Efficiency Plan, the DBF would not be allocated capital through the plan, despite a robust pipeline of projects in the coming years. And with the assistance of Treasurer Magaziner and other stakeholders, combined with this project pipeline, we were successful in having our $5 million request included in the 2021 Energy Efficiency Plan. That overall plan still has not been approved by the PUC, and therefore BBF has not received its capital to lend at the moment. And this is a challenge not only to meet demand, but also for us to continue to solicit interest in new projects. And frankly, the $5 million really is insufficient for us to meet the pipeline as we see over the next few years, even with leverage in the market. Our pipeline over the next 3 to 5 years is over $100 million, including assisting our schools, both new and old, to significantly upgrade their energy components, making them more healthy and efficient to operate. This is a model we just developed with East Providence and financing their new high school and providing over $20 million of low-cost finance to enable them, one, to maintain all of their housing aid plus all of their incentives from the state and borrow less money, and we save them over $1.5 million. Plus, enabling them to put in much more efficient energy components and cleaner air for the school. Providing for direct allocation of funds, the Infrastructure Bank enables us to successfully operate a program, expand clean energy projects at our cities and towns, put people to work, and save towns and money. And we appreciate yours and the committee's consideration in passing this legislation. And with that, I'm happy to answer any questions.
Thank you so much, Jeff, for your testimony. I appreciate the background and history there, and I think certainly continues to underline the importance of this program. So thank you, and thanks to the Infrastructure Bank for all your work on it. Are there any questions or comments from members of the committee for Jeff? Okay, hearing none. Jeff, thank you so much for joining us today.
Thank you.
Thanks. With that, that does conclude our testimony on Senate Bill 781. Treasurer Magaziner, I just want to say thank you for taking some time to join us today to discuss these two bills, your budget and the budget article on TANs. We do appreciate it, and I just want to thank you once again on behalf of the committee and the Senate for your office's work all the time, but especially in the last year. Thank you so much for your leadership and for everyone in the office.
Thank you, Chairman. Congratulations again on your new position. Thank you to all the members of the committee. And as always, our team and I remain available and eager to partner with you to help move the state forward. So I know you have a busy night, but I really appreciate the time, and thank you all very much for everything you do.
Thank you, Treasurer. With that, I'd like to entertain a motion from a member of the committee on both Senate Bill 781 and 782. Senator Murray. Senator De Palma makes a motion to hold, second by Senator Murray. Will the clerk please call the roll?
Chairman Pearson.
Yes.
Senator De Palma.
Yes.
Senator Felag. Senator Felag. Senator Paolino.
Yes.
Yes.
Senator Felag, yes. Senator Paolino, yes. Senator Cano.
Yes.
Senator Chacon.
Yes.
Senator Murray.
Yes.
Senator Sosnowski.
Yes.
8 in favor, 0 opposed.
Thank you, Mr. Clerk. Senator Chacon, I believe you'd also like to be included in the motion to hold in the affirmative on House Bill 5025, 5477, and 5534. Is that correct,
Yes.
sir?
That's correct, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you, Senator. So ordered. Next on our agenda is going to be Senator Miller. Senator, thank you for being patient with us as we completed those bills. We next have Senate Bill 371, an act relating to state affairs and government, Rhode Island Pay for Success Act. Senator Miller. And I think you may be on mute, Senator Miller.
You're right. So thank you for putting this on your agenda. The Coalition for the Homeless got a grant last year from the Federal Housing and Urban Development to create a pay-for-success model, also known as a social impact bond model, to develop 125 units specifically designed to house those who are previously homeless. And some of you might be familiar because there have been proposals in the past to finance a social impact bond model. And this is specific to that grant, and they have gotten the funding to initiate this, and there are several aspects to it. And I think you might have just gotten or will get very quickly written testimony from the Coalition from the Homeless that has a comprehensive proposal of what is included in this. I don't think they were anticipating a Monday hearing, so they weren't able to sign up for a call-in testimony, but I think it would be very instrumental for the committee to look over the written testimony. And I think we can see, or at least the coalition and myself are very optimistic because past proposals that the coalition had worked for on this model were co-sponsored by Speaker Sicarchi. So in the past, it was a very unfamiliar model. Now it's more familiar, seeing as the speaker was involved in designing and encouraging this kind of financing for these kind of projects.
Thank you so much, Senator Miller. I appreciate the introduction there, and we will, of course, rely on some of that written testimony from the coalition as well. So I want to thank you for bringing that to our attention. Are there any questions or comments from members of the committee for Senator Miller? Okay. Hearing none, and Senator, we do not have anyone signed up to testify this evening yet, so we will consult that written testimony when we do have it.
Thank you.
Thank you, Senator. Senator Murray, would you like to make a motion?
I'll make that motion to hold.
Senator Murray makes a motion to hold Senate Bill 371.
Second.
Second by Senator Paolino. Would the clerk please call the roll?
Chairman Pearson.
Yes.
Senator DePalma.
Yes.
Senator Felag. Senator Felag. Senator Paolino.
Yes.
Senator Cano.
Yes.
Senator Chacon.
Yes.
Senator Murray.
Yes.
Senator Sosnowski.
Yes.
7 in favor, 0 opposed.
Thank you, Mr. Clerk.
To be Senator Felag, yes.
We have you recorded. Thank you, Senator. Next on our agenda is going to be Senate Bill 293 by myself, an act relating to towns and cities municipal incentive aid. So this act would authorize the General Treasurer to withhold stated municipalities who do not meet their annual funding requirements into their local pension funds. This is actually a piece of legislation that I've introduced, I think, annually since 2016. We did pass a version of it probably in 2016 that began the pension study that we earlier discussed with the Treasurer, and that really has helped to ensure that we have consistency across all of our local pension systems and ensuring that they are funded. We are fortunate at this point in time, I believe, that all of the plans are meeting those required minimums, so there would be nobody that would have this withholding required. That being said, the requirement is a key part of the MERS statute that is required the cities and towns to make those payments even in any time in the state's history, which has helped keep the MERS plan funded at a much higher level. We do not have anyone signed up to testify this evening, though, on that piece of legislation. So with that, I'd like to entertain a motion from a member of the committee.
Motion to hold?
Senator Palmer makes a motion to hold, seconded by Senator Sosnowski. Would the clerk please call the roll?
Chairman Pearson.
Yes.
Senator DePalma.
Yes.
Senator Felag.
Yes.
Senator Paolino.
Yes.
Senator Cano.
Yes.
Senator Chacon.
Yes.
Senator Murray.
Yes.
Senator Sosnowski.
Yes.
8 in favor, 0 opposed.
Thank you, Mr. Clerk. We will hold that piece of legislation. I do not see. Okay. We're going to move to Senate Bill 478, also by myself, authorizes the creation of the first-time homebuyer savings account from which savings to purchase a home could be deducted from an individual or couple's personal income taxes. I want to thank the Association of Realtors for working with me on this piece of legislation. Essentially, this would enable, as the title says, people to save for homes. We do know how important home ownership is into accumulating wealth and also into ensuring economic prosperity. So anything that we can do to help support individuals as they look to save for a home is certainly something that we would like to be able to do. With that, I'd like to actually welcome David Salvatore as our first individual to testify on this, representing the Association of Realtors. David, welcome to Senate Finance.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman and members of the committee. Before I begin my testimony, please allow me to thank you, Mr. Chairman, along with Senators Cano, Miller, Coyne, and Oyer for sponsoring the First-Time Homebuyer Savings Account Act. We deeply appreciate your strong support for the bill. The Rhode Island Association of Realtors strongly supports Senate Bill 478, which would permit first-time homebuyers and/or their benefactors to establish a savings account intended for the purchase of a first home. As all of you know, the impact of home ownership has on our economy shouldn't be ignored, and I don't think it can be overstated. In the written testimony that I provided to all of you, I provided a 2019 study and some information relative to the importance of the real estate industry and its impact on the economy. You should know that the real estate industry in Rhode Island accounts for nearly 19% of the gross state product. And every time a home is purchased in Rhode Island, $90,000 is contributed back to the Rhode Island economy. So that makes a big difference, not only from the real estate perspective, but a lot of the ancillary businesses, many of them small businesses in Rhode Island, who benefit from home ownership. One of the features that we like about Senate Bill 478 is that opening a first-time homebuyer savings account is completely voluntary. This is not a mandate, but we do think that it can be a significant tool in the home buying process and savings for down payment assistance and closing costs, etc. And individuals can use their personal preference to decide what is best for them, how much they can put away in terms of savings and their hard-earned money. And similar to an education or retirement savings account, there is a tax benefit for individuals or couples who want to take advantage of, if needed, the day that they want to buy their first home. They can save as much as they feel is within their budget, but included in the bill are some limitations. So in a calendar year, an individual can save or receive the tax benefit up to $10,000. A couple can receive the tax benefit up to $20,000, and there's a total aggregate amount of $300,000, I believe, over 15 years. We recognize that this savings program is not going to reduce all of the barriers to homeownership, and I've stated this in this committee and other Senate committees as well. This is also an issue of racial and economic justice. We know that the lack of home ownership opportunity has forced many minority communities to take on issues like student loan debt at a greater rate. And in 2019, it was eye-opening to learn that Rhode Island ranked third from the bottom in terms of student loan debt per capita. And that's a hindrance on an individual or a couple's ability to buy that first home. So Senate Bill 478, we think, is a reasonable approach to the home buying process for first-time home buyers. Additionally, the legislation would promote financial literacy, something that I know this committee has discussed a lot in the past, and I'm sure it will in the future. And it rewards residents for their long-term commitment to save for a home with a small tax benefit that would add up over the years, and we think that's smart and thoughtful public policy. Some of you might be asking, what is in it for the state? Well, home ownership opportunities, if made available, increase opportunity for Rhode Islanders to access the wealth-building benefits of home ownership and a greater employment and economic activity at all levels of government. And in return, the state stands to receive increased revenues collected from the real estate transfer tax, income taxes on increased earnings, and sale taxes on consumer spending. So for those of you who own a home and even tenants, you know that maintaining a home is expensive, and it is an opportunity to contribute to the local economy. So whether that be upgrading appliances, hiring trade workers, we believe all of that spending, consumer spending, would exceed the tax revenue foregone due to the bill's tax deduction. So, look, I believe that Rhode Island has always been a fantastic place to live and work and play. The Rhode Island Association of Realtors certainly believe that too. And the creation of this homebuyer savings account, we think, will build off of the good policies that the General Assembly is working on to continue making Rhode Island an attractive place to live and conduct business. Mr. Chairman, thank you for your leadership on this issue. I thank the committee for... Sorry, I think there was a delay there. We thank the committee for their leadership as well, and I'm happy to take any questions at this time.
Thank you so much, Mr. Salvatore. We appreciate your testimony, and thank you so much for you and the Realtors Association for working with me on this legislation. I appreciate it. Are there any questions or comments from members of the committee? Hearing none. David, thank you so much for your testimony today. Always good to hear from you.
Likewise. Thank you.
Thank you. With that does conclude our testimony on Senate Bill 478. Senator Panalito makes a motion to hold, seconded by Senator Murray. Would the clerk please call the roll?
Chairman Pearson.
Yes.
Senator DePalma. He's no longer on. Senator Felag.
Yes.
Senator Paolino.
Yes.
Senator Acosta.
Yes, and Jamie, can I request that I be recorded present and in the affirmative for the previous votes? Thank you, brother.
Thank you, Senator. Senator Cano.
Yes.
Senator Chacon.
Yes.
Senator Murray.
Yes.
Senator Sosnowski.
Yes.
8 in favor, 0 opposed.
Thank you very much, Mr. Clerk. Next on our agenda is going to be Senate Bill 575 by Senator Lawson, an act relating to taxation, personal income tax. It grants an exemption from the personal income tax to writers, composers, and artists residing within the East Providence Art Zone. Senator Lawson has joined us this evening. Senator, welcome to Senate Finance.
Thank you, Chairman Pearson, members of the committee. Good afternoon. As Chairman Pearson said, this bill will create an arts district in East Providence. It's located on the bottom of page 3. It's the center of the city, part of the Wachamoka district, and the artists living in that area would be exempt from personal income tax. Today, the Director of Planning and Economic Development, Bill Fazioli, will be testifying before the committee, available to answer any questions. There'll be a resolution on the April 20th docket of the East Providence City Council. You should also have in your packet a letter of support from our local arts chairwoman on the district. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Senator. Are there any questions or comments from members of the committee for Senator Lawson? Okay. Hearing none, we do have one individual that is signed up to testify. It's William Fazzoli with the City of East Providence Planning Department in support of the legislation. William, welcome to Senate Finance.
Good evening. Thank you.
Please proceed.
Well, yes, thank you. We are very happy to have this bill introduced by Senator Lawson and the East Providence delegation. It's really going to be key for the city to reinvigorate a central part of our community that's had some, redevelopment problems, and we think this will be an essential bill that help us achieve some economic development goals.
Thank you so much. Are there any questions or comments for our witness? Hearing none, thank you so much for joining us today, and thank you for your testimony.
All right. Thank you for your help.
Thank you. Okay. For this legislation is the first time we've heard it. I'd like to continue to make sure we get a fiscal note on this before we proceed. Would a member of the committee...
Motion to hold.
Senator Felag makes a motion to hold, second by Senator Murray. Would the clerk please call the roll?
Chairman Pearson.
Yes.
Senator DePalma. Oops, he dropped off. Senator Felag.
Yes.
Senator Paolino.
Yes.
Senator Acosta.
Yes.
Senator Cano.
Yes.
Senator Chacon.
Yes.
Senator Murray.
Yes.
Senator Sosnowski.
Yes.
8 in favor, 0 opposed.
Thank you very much, Mr. Clerk. Senator Lawson, we'd like to now take up Senate Bill 708, also by Senator Lawson, an act relating to a tax agreement between the City of East Providence and the ExxonMobil Oil Corporation. Senator Lawson.
Thank you, Chairman Pearson. So this would create a 10-year tax treaty between the city and ExxonMobil, and it would resolve a dispute that's been going on for a decade, and you should have a resolution before you, before the City Council, and a letter from the city solicitor. So the ExxonMobil appealed its assessment, the city hired its own assessor, and the two parties came to an agreement on a new assessment. So the city would, over 10 years, spread out the $2 million that it is agreed to credit ExxonMobil. So this would greatly help the city because the credit would be applied over 10 years and without interest. So this is an enabling legislation, and the city would appreciate your help with this. And again, you should have the resolution before you.
We do. Thank you, Senator. We do have both a letter from the town solicitor as well as a resolution from the City Council in East Providence. Also for the committee members, I did have a chance today to speak with the town solicitor, or sorry, is it the town or city, Senator Lawson?
City.
So you messed me up though, the whole towny thing and then the City of East Providence, it really messes with one. But I did have an opportunity to speak with the town solicitor. This is, as Senator Lawson mentioned, this happens often in municipal government where there's a dispute with a large corporation or taxpayer, I should say, that's in their district, where on the value of the property and the assessment that was there. Obviously, as the senator mentioned, the city and the taxpayer in this situation have made an agreement related to settling this dispute, and this is enabling to allow them to be able to do that. So certainly wanted to make sure I pass that along and let the committee members know that I did have the opportunity to speak with the solicitor today as well. Senator, anything you wanted to add more to that? Okay.
I think you covered it.
Okay. Any questions or comments from members of the committee? Okay. Hearing none, thank you so much, Senator Lawson. We appreciate it. And I believe we'll be able to come back and take this up shortly. But just because it is the first time we've heard it, Senator Murray, would you like to make a motion? Senator Murray makes a motion to hold, second by Senator Felag. Will the clerk please call the roll?
Chairman Pearson.
Yes.
Senator Felag.
Yes.
Senator Paolino.
Yes.
Senator Acosta.
Yes.
Senator Cano. Senator Cano. Senator Chacon.
Yes.
Senator Murray.
Yes.
Senator Sosnowski.
Yes.
7 in favor, 0 opposed.
Thank you, Mr. Clerk. Thank you, Senator Lawson, for joining us this evening. We appreciate it.
Excuse me, Chairman, would I be recorded in the affirmative on this one as well?
Absolutely. So ordered.
Thank you.
Next on our agenda is going to be Senate Bill 579 by Senator Acosta. Senator Acosta.
Thank you, Chairman, and thank you to my colleagues on the Finance Committee. Senate Bill 579 deals with the transfer of ownership of sewage infrastructure from the City of Central Falls to the Narragansett Bay Commission. I have submitted this bill at the request of the City of Central Falls. It has a companion bill on the House side. Following receivership the city underwent a review of all the services that it was and wasn't able to provide. Now, as we know, there's been a lot of kind of institutional isomorphism where all municipalities, cities, and towns are expected to provide the same services, but they don't all necessarily have the same capacity to do so. And so in light of our review, one of the things that the city found was that it doesn't have the staff or the resources to effectively manage a pension or retirement system. So we moved, with the support of the treasurer, to transfer our existing one to the MERS system. Now, similarly, we don't have the capital, human capital, or the actual economic capital to manage an underground sewer utility. The bill would be enabling legislation for Central Falls and others to start to shift their infrastructure to the Narragansett Bay Commission. NBC currently bills Central Falls residents for what's going through the pipes. This would give them ownership of the pipes themselves. And, you know, I'll admit that in principle, I'm not the biggest fan of public utilities being under private ownership. But in this case, where they do manage a lot of the waste already, and the history has been one of a good corporate partner, we see this as a win-win where the corporation or the commission rather would gain considerable assets that they could use for finance purposes, and the city would be alleviated from the current burden or responsibility of this infrastructure. So for members of the committee, you should have received a letter of support from our mayor. As I mentioned, this has been heard on the House side as well, with the support of the two reps from Central Falls, Rep. Giraldo and Rep. McLaughlin, and I'm happy to answer any questions from the committee now. Sorry, one last thing I would add is we also received a fiscal note for this earlier today, which outlined that this would have no impact either on the city or on the state. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you, Senator. And we do have that testimony from the mayor. We also do have a letter from the Bay Commission themselves with some concerns that they brought forward as well. Are there any questions or comments from the committee for Senator Acosta? Okay. Hearing none, Senator, would you like to make a motion on this at the time?
Sure, I'll move to hold, Mr. Chairman.
Senator Acosta makes a motion to hold, second by Senator Felag. Will the clerk please call the roll?
Chairman Pearson.
Yes.
Senator Felag.
Yes.
Senator Paolino.
Yes.
Senator Acosta.
Yes.
Senator Cano.
Yes.
Senator Chacon.
Yes.
Senator Murray.
Yes.
Senator Sosnowski.
Yes.
8 in favor, 0 opposed.
Thank you so much, Mr. Clerk. Next on our agenda is Senate Bill 586 by Senator Sosnowski. It is an act relating to education, the Teachers Retirement Act. Senator Sosnowski.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman and members of the committee. I introduced this bill again at the request of my constituent, who is Roger Bodrow. He's the president of the Rhode Island AFT retired chapter and chair of the Rhode Island Public Employee Retiree Coalition. What this bill would do, effective January 1st, 2022, the current COLA suspension schedule would be replaced with a fractional annual COLA of 25% of the COLA declared for that plan year, as it pertains to retired teachers, state and municipal employees. Mr. Bodrow was going to testify this evening, but he did submit written testimony, and I'm sure you received quite a bit of written testimony. He didn't realize that the cutoff for signing up for verbal testimony was 4 p.m. yesterday. But going a little bit further, if I may, if I can just highlight a couple of comments from his comments. One thing that he does mention is the current pension COLA suspension provides for a COLA every 4 years. This bill would provide a fraction of the COLA each year, 1/4 of the COLA each year for the 4-year period. And as we know, Mr. Chairman, this legislation does require to have a fiscal note from the General Treasurer's office. and I would respectfully request that the necessary steps could be taken to receive this fiscal note from the General Treasurer. And if anyone has any questions, I will endeavor to answer. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Senator Sosnowski. And I do know this is a bill that we did order a pension impact statement on last year. With your request, Senator, I will certainly make that order again this year so we can make sure we have that impact study ready and be able to proceed on this issue.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Are there any questions or comments for Senator Sosnowski? Hearing none. Senator, thank you so much for introducing this. We do not have any witnesses signed up to testify at this time. Senator Sosnowski, would you like to make a motion?
Yes, I move to hold.
Senator Sosnowski makes a motion to hold, second by Senator Murray. Clerk, please call the roll.
Chairman Pearson.
Yes.
Senator Felag.
Yes.
Senator Paolino.
Yes.
Senator Acosta.
Yes.
Senator Cano.
Yes.
Senator Chacon.
Yes.
Senator Murray.
Yes.
Senator Sosnowski.
Yes.
8 in favor, 0 opposed.
Thank you so much, Mr. Clerk. Next on our agenda is going to be Senate Bill 578. I would just like to make a note for the record that Senator Palma has asked to recuse on this particular item before we proceed. And with that, I do know that Senator Mack had joined us. Senator, welcome to Senate Finance. I'd like to have you make introductions on Senate Bill 578, an act relating to public finance, divestment of state pension funds from military contractors. Senator Mack.
Hi, thank you, Chairman. I want to first start off by saying that this bill is a bill geared at making sure that our state pension fund is not going towards the use of military-grade weapons, and that we are in turn transitioning our economy into one of environmental resilience and environmental equity. This bill would require the state to invest a commission to identify state pension funds that have invested in military weapon manufacturers within 6 months of its passage. Following this, that commission would have 8 months to either sell, divest, or withdraw from state pension funds invested in military weapon manufacturers. And for the purpose of this bill, military weapon manufacturers are defined as arms-producing companies, defense contractors, military industries that primarily produce guns, ammunition, missiles, military aircrafts, military vehicles, and military ships for the armed forces of the nation. Currently, our federal government spends about $738 billion for the military. It's one of the largest line items in our federal budget. And it's really important that as a country, we are not continuing to enable in financially supporting military weapons manufacturing that derive their profits from global disruption and the various cycles of violence that we see nationally. Instead, we should focus our investments on climate resiliency, universal health care, public education, and other things that help build up our communities, especially in light of a global pandemic. This bill would also send the message to our federal delegation that we need to invest in our future, in our climate, in our healthcare systems, and in the people of our great state. I do want to close with saying it's not clear right now what the harm would be or what the impact would be from divesting in these in our pension systems that are militarized, and that is the whole purpose of the study commission, to see what savings can we have and where else can we invest our state's money into something that will have longevity and will also impact many of our most vulnerable communities moving forward. And with that, I yield to any questions.
Thank you so much, Senator, for that introduction. Are there any questions or comments from members of the committee? Okay, hearing none. We do have a decent amount of individuals that have signed up to testify on this piece of legislation. So for just all those who have testified, I'm just going to ask if you could please try to keep your testimony to no more than 3 minutes if you could, and try not to be repetitive of anything that came before for any other witnesses, just to make sure that we are able to get through everyone that has signed up to testify this evening. The first person to testify is Randy Rice from the Office of the General Treasurer in opposition to Senate Bill 578. Mr. Rice, welcome to Senate Finance.
Thank you, Chair, and thank you, members of the committee. My name is Randy Rice, and I work in the Treasurer's Office, and I'm testifying on behalf of Treasurer Magaziner, who is Chair of the State Investment Commission, which is a committee comprised of investment experts which oversees our state pension fund. When developing an investment policy, the Commission has a fiduciary responsibility to prioritize the retirement of our 60,000 members. Those are our teachers, nurses, first responders, and other members of the pension system who have spent their careers serving others. The default position of the Treasurer's Office is to oppose legislation that would restrict the Commission's ability to use its judgment to deliver the strongest possible risk-adjusted return for the pension system. Those returns are crucial to ensuring that the state of Rhode Island can deliver the pension benefits to our members who have earned them over their career. The Commission already considers material risks when making investment decisions for the pension system. Last year, the Commission voted to end the pension system investments in companies that manufacture assault weapons for civilian use and operate for-profit prisons. Those type of decisions, however, must be made through analysis by the experts on the Commission and Treasury staff to ensure that they serve the financial interests of the members of our pension fund and don't damage their retirement security. The defense and aerospace industry represents a significant percentage of the U.S. stock market, including companies such as General Dynamics, which is one of the largest private employers in the state of Rhode Island, with almost 17,000 employees in our region. Removing the State Investment Commission's authority to make investment decisions while also significantly limiting investment options would pose risks to the pension system and its members. For this reason, we cannot support S578, but we would be happy to engage with Senator Mack to find other ways to advocate for a more peaceful world. Again, thank you for your time, and I'm happy to answer any questions that I can.
Thank you so much, Randy. We appreciate your testimony. Are there any questions or comments from members of the committee? Hearing none, thank you so much, Randy. We appreciate it.
Thank you, Chair.
Next to testify is going to be Kirk Robinson, testifying in support of Senate Bill 578. Mr. Robinson, welcome to Senate Finance.
Hey, how are you?
Very good. Thank you so much. Please proceed.
Great. So I am going to provide some testimony here on that would be Senate Bill 578, divestment of state pension funds from military contractors. So thank you, everybody in the Finance Committee, for spending some time with me here. And thank you to the senators who introduced this bill. Yeah, so I'm in support of this bill, and I'll just keep it, I'm going to try to keep this brief. I don't think that the state should have any kinds of investments, especially sort of like in the state pension fund, any kinds of investments around military weapons manufacturing. So like if we're investing in those types of companies, to me, morally, I have some issues with that. It's just one of those things where it's in a sense the state being kind of complicit in some of the things that military weapons manufacturers do, which is provide and continue the sort of military-industrial complex, contribute to really terrible things that are happening overseas. I think about the crisis in Yemen right now as an example of that, and that weapons manufacturers obviously, they profit on this kind of, human suffering and misery. Even the Trump administration, there were many members of the Republican Party during his administration that wanted to pull out of Yemen, and ultimately I don't think that happened, and so I don't actually really see this as being that big of there's a chance there's even bipartisan sort of support to not engage in these types of sort of these engagements, and so I think, set against that background, to me it would make a lot of sense to not have the state's pension fund invested in weapons manufacturing. There's a human rights element here. There's a dignity aspect to this. that I think connects to this issue. And I think by divesting from these, or at least, requiring the state to identify and then potentially divest would be a really good first step in not making sort of Rhode Island and our state complicit in these sorts of things, even if it's just through something like through investments through our pension fund. So that was all I had, and I appreciate people giving some space and some time for me to.
Thank you so much for your testimony. We appreciate it, and thank you for joining us this evening.
All right, take care.
Next to testify is going to be Nancy Hood, representing East Bay Citizens for Peace in support of Senate Bill 578. Nancy, welcome to Senate Finance.
Oh, thank you. Hi.
Please proceed.
Hi, my name is Nancy Hood. I'm from Bristol, Rhode Island, and I'm here on behalf of East Bay Citizens for Peace to express our support of Senate Bill 578. East Bay Citizens for Peace is a grassroots organization made up primarily of individuals from the East Bay area. We formed 18 years ago in response to the impending U.S. invasion of Iraq. And we continue to hold monthly vigils for peace and justice in downtown Bristol and sponsor public forums and lobby Congress. We wholeheartedly support this bill because we believe it's a moral imperative that our country's priorities shift to fund people's needs instead of a budget that profits the weapons industry. More than half of the U.S. discretionary budget is allocated to the Pentagon, much to the benefit of military contractors. In fact, U.S. military weaponry around the world topped $175 billion during this current fiscal year. Not only has the sale of U.S. manufactured weapons contributed to the Saudi Arabia-led genocidal war in Yemen, which you probably all know is the worst humanitarian crisis in the world right now, but this investment in weaponry has kept us on the path of endless war, and it has not made any of us more secure. This priority of military spending has robbed the American people of much-needed programs and left the country woefully unprepared for this pandemic that has resulted in the loss of over 500,000 lives and is continuing to kill people. With the U.S. spending more on military than the next 10 countries combined, according to the National Priorities Project, it ranks 37th in health, according to the World Health Organization. Now, clearly, there is something wrong there. In 1953, President Dwight D. Eisenhower said, "Every gun that is made, every warship launched, every rocket fired signifies in the final sense a theft from those who are hungry and are not fed, those who are cold and are not clothed. This world in arms is not spending money alone. It is spending the sweat of its laborers, the genius of its scientists, the hopes of its people." And so I ask you to support this legislation. We can withdraw our support of the weapons industry and invest in industries that contribute to the well-being of our society and planet. Thank you very much. I hope you pass this legislation on to be voted on. Thank you.
Thank you so much for your testimony. We do appreciate it. Next to testify is going to be Peter Nightingale with the Poor People's Campaign for Rhode Island in support of Senate Bill 578. Peter, welcome to Senate Finance.
Hello, thank you very much. I'm Peter Nightingale, as you mentioned, and I'm testifying on behalf of the Rhode Island Poor People's Campaign. We support this divestment bill. As you know, an investment plan is both an economic and a moral statement. So I have a simple question for you. Would you go over dead bodies for profit? Well, let me explain. 250,000 Americans die prematurely every year because of poverty. Now that's a number. Let me give you a picture with that number. We could pave the way from Providence to Westerly and back with dead bodies every single year. Investment in the war economy and in militarism is immoral. Dr. Martin Luther King in 1967, 54 years and a day exactly, 54 years ago plus a day, said that he could not be silent in the face of such cruel manipulation of the poor. He referred to the U.S. government as the greatest purveyor of violence in the world. Given the climate crisis and the COVID-19 pandemic, investment in the war economy and in militarism clearly makes no economic sense whatsoever. So let me leave you with this question again. Even if it did make economic sense, would you sacrifice your morality for profit? And I have one final question. Do you really need to hold this bill for further study, as so often happens, to figure out the answer to the questions I raised? That's all I have to say about this bill, but if anybody has a question, I'd be more than happy to answer.
Thank you so much, Peter, for your testimony. We appreciate it. Does not appear that we have any questions from the committee at this time. Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Next to testify is going to be David Oppenheimer, representing himself in support of Senate Bill 578. David, welcome to Senate Finance.
Good evening. Thank you. I'd like to address, I prepared these remarks before I heard Mr. Rice's comments tonight, based on what was said in the House hearing. And I'm glad he mentioned working with Senator Mack to revise the bill. So I don't want to come off as too confrontational here, but mainly I want to strongly challenge the incorrect notion that this bill will somehow endanger the value of the pension fund. If you look at the bill, Section 35-1046, and this section is labeled exceptions, makes it clear that if the value of the pension fund drops a certain amount, and it's not a very large amount to trigger this, a halt on all divestments could go into place, and the option to repurchase companies that were divested from would be permitted. And again, this drop isn't a very large percentage of the value of the pension fund. In fact, there's a chance that normal market fluctuations could trigger it. Certainly the percentage could be adjusted in the bill if the Treasurer feels that this is necessary. But this fail-safe measure alone prevents this bill from seriously hurting the fund. And there are other measures in the bill that also do the same thing. Section 1044, which deals with indirect holdings by hedge funds and investment funds. And that's holdings that bundle investments all together, where there's a mix of holdings from different segments of the economy. There's no compulsion behind their divestment at all. The wording says they will be asked to remove such companies from investment funds or to create a new managed fund devoid of such companies. Thirdly, the bill gives managers 14 months to divest and to find alternate investments. Now, not every profitable fund in the world has extensive holdings in the major military contractors. And again, the bundled ones, they'll have 14 months to change it, and it's not mandatory. So what we're talking about here is perhaps the sale of 24 or so corporations whose stocks are major military arms providers. They would have to be sold. But, you know, they're not the only profitable stocks on the market. So if this bill is passed, and if the state-selected money managers know what they're doing, there's plenty of time and opportunity to reinvest profitably. So it should be noted that ESG funds, and that's funds that invest with an eye to environment, social, and governmental impacts, they've had higher yields, higher returns than those of other types of investment funds over the last few years. So there's a lot of winners that don't have these stocks in them. Finally, on the subject of responsibility to workers in the state and the issue of jobs, I'd like to point out that if the state decides to cherry-pick sectors of the economy to invest in, and I realize it's important to protect jobs in the state, but if through the Treasury or through training programs or tax breaks. Military investment is the sector that's focused on. I have just one more sentence here. Military investing is the sector that's focused on. That's not a really good way to go about creating jobs, because as the Cost of War project at Brown's Watson Institute has found, and other research institutes have found, $1 million invested in elementary and secondary education will produce 178% more jobs than if invested in the military sector. You'll get 21.5% more jobs if it's invested in the healthcare or green energy sector than in the military. So when one talks about creating jobs, when one talks about investing in the military sector, you should also be talking about the much larger number of jobs that are crowded out by focusing on this one sector. Thank you.
Mr. Oppenheimer. We do appreciate your testimony very much. Thank you so much.
Yes, thank you. Thank you.
Next to testify is going to be Katherine Hillary, representing herself, also in support of Senate Bill 578. Katherine, welcome to Senate Finance.
Oh, thank you.
Please proceed.
Okay, hi, my name is Katherine Hillary from Newport, Rhode Island, speaking on behalf of SB 578. Senators, are you listening to me? Are you listening to us? I would specifically like to address my comments to those of you who are looking for the campaign support, excuse me, of those in military jobs in Rhode Island and their families, and not considering the even greater support you could garner if you were to support the coming tsunami of jobs about to be created in clean energy, education, and healthcare as a result of the infrastructure and other bills about to be passed. Our own Watson Institute of International and Public Affairs at Brown University has studied this issue on their paper on the costs of war. They have found that military spending creates fewer jobs than the same amount of money would have if invested in other sectors. Clean energy and healthcare spending creates 50% more jobs than the equivalent amount of money spent on the military. Education creates more than twice as many jobs. This is because clean energy construction and education are more labor-intensive with less money needed for materials and labor. Also, a greater percentage of spending on clean energy, education, and healthcare creates more domestic jobs. The same amount of money hires more people in those non-military sectors. $1 billion in military spending creates approximately 11,200 jobs compared to 26,700 jobs in education and 17,200 jobs in healthcare and 16,800 jobs in clean energy. Have you been listening? Divesting from military weapons manufacturers in our state pension funds and instead investing in constructive industries like clean energy, education, and health care would create well over 5 times the amount of jobs. Each job affects whole families and families' votes. I urge you to commit to a healthier, more prosperous future for Rhode Island. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Katherine. We appreciate your testimony.
Thank you.
Next to testify is going to be Enrique Sanchez, representing the BLM Rhode Island PAC and Prov DSA, in support of Senate Bill 578. Enrique, welcome to Senate Finance.
How you doing?
Very good, thank you. Please proceed.
Great, thank you so much. My name is Enrique Sanchez. I am a Rhode Island resident. I am here representing the BLM RI PAC and Providence DSA, Democratic Socialists of America. I am here in support of Bill 578, which would push for divestment of state pension funds from our state to military contractors. I believe that this bill is very, very important. I really appreciate the sponsors of this bill, Senator Mack, Senator Anderson, Senator Bell, and Senator Acosta, Senator Colgan for introducing this very, very important bill around military divestment from our states. I had the pleasure of having a conversation with Senator Jack Reed yesterday at stand with the Asian Community Solidarity event, I had a question. We had a conversation around the funding the military and what he thought about all these divestment bills. His reasoning and obviously his talking points are always going to be around that we need to, keep spending military, increase our military spending, that we have adversaries across the world, that it's a dangerous world, this and that. So at the end of the day, we can't count with our federal senators and our federal representatives. They are big fans of the military-industrial complex, of spending heavily.
Testimony, we do appreciate it.
Thank you so much. I appreciate it. Okay.
Next to testify is going to be Patricia Fonts, representing the Rhode Island Anti-War Committee and Pax Christi RI in support of Senate Bill 578. Patricia, welcome to Senate Finance.
Thank you very much. I'm Patricia Fonts, and I live in Hopkinton, Rhode Island, where I'm a constituent of Elaine Morgan. In my recent testimony to House Finance on a bill parallel to this one, I concentrated my evidence on the fact that an international organization with an office at the UN had informed me recently of the enormous importance it ascribes to the work of peace activists in Rhode Island and the decision by the Textron Corporation to stop manufacturing cluster bombs. If a small number of activists out on the street can have such an impact, imagine what you, as members of the Rhode Island Senate Finance Committee, can bring about in passing on Senate Bill 578 on divestment of RI pension funds from all military manufacturers in the state. However, I've decided to skip those details and concentrate my testimony today on the words of Pope Francis in his Easter address yesterday in Rome. I quote, "The pandemic is still spreading while the social and economic crisis remains severe. Nonetheless, and this is scandalous, armed conflicts have not ended and military arsenals are being strengthened. I hear in the Pope's reference to the ending of armed conflicts the message last year of Antonio Guterres, Secretary General of the United Nations, who called for at least a pause in all armed conflicts during the duration of the COVID pandemic, and he was ignored. Your vote to send this bill to the full Senate will not ignore, but will instead reinforce the Pope's next words, quote, "May the efforts to resolve conflicts peacefully continue in respect for human rights and the sacredness of life, through fraternal reconciliation and true solidarity," end of quote. This bill, number 578, provides you with an opportunity to put moral and ethical considerations above the cash register conscience. That is, profit is all. That's the approach to decision-making implied by the recent comment of our state treasurer, Seth Magaziner, on the companion House Bill 6026. Pass the bill, please. Don't put it into study. Thank you very much. Goodbye now.
Thank you so much for your testimony. We do appreciate it. Next to testify is going to be Helen O'Grady, representing the No Endless War on Excessive Militarism, in support of Senate Bill 578. Helen, welcome to Senate Finance.
Thank you, Senator Pearson. And can you hear me?
We can.
Can you hear me?
We can.
Thank you, Senator Pearson, and honorable members for this opportunity to testify. And thank you, Senator Acosta, for co-sponsoring this with Senators Mack, Bell, Culkin, Anderson, and Mendez. I'm a member of NEWM, which stands for No Excessive War, No Endless War, or Excessive Militarism. I support S578 because I really don't want my tax dollars contributing to investments that primarily profit weapon manufacturers at the expense of human life. In particular, I'm concerned that the highly profitable weapon industry is aiding the war in Yemen by selling weapons to Saudi Arabia. And as we know, they are using our bombs to target and kill civilians at weddings, hospitals, and on school buses. Human Rights Watch has called the bus bombing a war crime. The UN has called the war in Yemen one of the worst humanitarian disasters of our time. Rhode Island needs to stop enabling the military contractors who produce these weapons. Furthermore, as we've heard already, the return on socially responsible investing has proven to be financially sound and will not negatively impact Rhode Island's investment returns. ESG funds, as David Oppenheimer has pointed out, have performed better than non-ESG funds, according to the Financial Times. So divestment from the weapon industry would allow us then to redirect investments to socially productive corporations that increase assets in climate resilience, health, and education, all of which aid economic growth. This divestment is a moral imperative that makes financial sense. Please, I urge you to move this bill out of committee to the General Assembly. Thank you.
Thank you so much for your testimony. We do appreciate it. Next to testify is going to be Linda Stevens, representing herself in support of Senate Bill 578. Linda, welcome to Senate Finance.
Hi, thank you, Linda Stevens. I strongly support this bill, and I would like to speak to one of the reasons why. I have several reasons, but I'm only going to talk tonight about the environmental reason that was touched on earlier by the Senator. Of the array of investment options, there are different effects of each of these options on the environment. Some are helpful, some are neutral, and some are destructive. Unfortunately, the U.S. military is one of the investment options most destructive to the environment. The Defense Department is the world's largest consumer of oil and is one of the world's top emitters of greenhouse gases. Its large carbon footprint significantly increases the mitigation needed to restore and repair environmental damage from industrial activities. In terms of spending, 53% of federal discretionary spending goes to defense, while only 4% goes to energy and the environment. This is already a very unbalanced allocation, in my view, towards excessive militarism. In addition, a number of recent analyses have shown that ESG funds, also known as sustainable funds, have outperformed traditional funds. According to a Morningstar report, sustainable funds have had net flows of $51 billion in 2020, which is more than double the 2019 total of $21 billion, and is nearly 10 times the total from 2018. Sustainable funds continue to grow in popularity in addition to showing higher performance. Divesting via this bill would not only be a step towards helping the environment, it could very well lead to much better performance outcomes, and I urge you to support it. Thanks so much.
Thank you so much. We do appreciate your testimony.
Thank you.
Next to testify is going to be Jonathan Daly LaBelle, representing No Endless War, in support of Senate Bill 578. Jonathan, welcome to Senate Finance.
Oh, yes, thank you. Thank you, Chair Pearson, and also thank you to lead sponsor Mack and co-sponsors Anderson, Calkin, Bell, Acosta, and Mendes. So appreciated to see this come forward. I'm a resident in South Kingstown, and Senator Sosnowski on this committee is my senator. I'm calling, I am in support of Senate Bill 578, and I would just like to touch on, I think sometimes it seems like this is an insurmountable task to reduce militarism and this military spending and the weapons sales. But I'd like to look back, not so far into the past, after the Cold War ended. By the early 90s, we really had we flattened and bent the curve of military spending, and we started to reduce our military footprint around the world. And that carried on for a while, maybe about 10 years or so. And unfortunately, we had a huge spike with the second Bush president with the destabilization of the Middle East. We don't need to go through that history, of course, but the point more is that we had brought the level down, and we got to a point where we could start to invest in some of these other things that some of the other speakers are talking about, such as the climate resiliency, healthcare, education, infrastructure, and so we can get there again. I think Rhode Island can be part of that. I think that the Senate Finance Committee can be part of that, as other people are saying, to not just put things on hold, but to vote this out of committee. And I think the key piece here is, with the investment piece, is these are our tax dollars, and I think we have to consider, with our tax dollars being used in this way, are we kind of causing the positive return from the militarism, from these military corporations, where if we chose to use our tax dollars differently, maybe most specifically into the climate resiliency, that would produce so many jobs and would address a very real threat in our world, that by investing in those, we could have a greater return than we're already seeing. Some of the speakers have identified that the ESG funds are seeing positive returns, and if we made a societal shift toward more of those uses, the returns there could probably be even greater. So thank you for your time. I do hope that this can get voted out, and I hope that there can be efforts made between the legislature and the Treasurer's office to see some progress on this issue. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Jonathan. We appreciate your testimony this evening. Next to testify is Nancy Houston with Providence FCNL Advocacy Team in support of the legislation. Nancy, welcome to Senate Finance.
Thank you. Should I begin?
Please proceed.
Hi, I'm Nancy Houston from Cranston. I'm clerk of the Providence Friends Committee on National Legislation, a Quaker lobbying group. And I'm testifying in support of this bill. Today, my heart is still full of the promise and hope of Easter. Yesterday, my husband and I attended 2 different online services, and the primary message that came through was that Christ's love is for all of humanity. And as a Quaker, I see that of God in all people and cannot support violence against anyone. War is the ultimate act of violence, and military weapons manufacturers facilitate war. Therefore, I ask you to vote for this bill that would divest funds from military weapons manufacturers. Thank you.
Thank you so much for your testimony. We do appreciate it. Next to testify.
You're welcome. Yep.
Thank you. Next to testify is going to be Andrew Poyant, representing himself in support of Senate Bill 578. Andrew, welcome to Senate Finance.
Thank you. My name's Andrew Poyant. I'm calling in support of Bill 578 to stop having our pension go towards the military-industrial complex and companies that are funding weapons of war. We've been at war for my entire life. We are the number one spender we spend more on war than any other country, and we also export more weapons than any other country. And I think, we often don't think about it because we're not actively at war here in the U.S., but it's a tragedy what we do throughout the world with bombing other countries, and this is one step that will work towards having a more peaceful world. So I urge you and everyone on the committee to vote in favor of this bill and moving it to a full House vote, full Senate vote. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Andrew. We appreciate your testimony. Next testify is going to be Stephen Schwartz, representing himself in support of Senate Bill 578. Stephen, welcome to Senate Finance.
Thank you very much. My name is Stephen Schwartz. I'm calling to testify on behalf of passing Bill 578. I'm the clerk of the Peace and Social Action Committee at our local Quaker meeting, among other things. And my take on it, I'm also a small business person. So the U.S. military decided to build thousands of missiles in the 50s and early 60s based on a missile gap estimate of the USSR, having about 500 ICBMs. And around 1962, when we first had the Discoverer satellite launched, we found that the USSR had 4 ICBMs. 1, 2, 3, 4. Yet the spending requests by the military just kept going, as if, someday they'll have more, and so we need to have more. We've heard lots of stories about very expensive hammers and all, but I think mostly it's a matter of the judgment of the kind of spending that happens. As a business person, I think about how to use capital resources to manage things. And instead of buying a faster, more expensive machine, I might want to put money into market research and marketing to see how to gain the trust of customers. Suppose our government took maybe $300 billion this year from our military spending and spent it opening and running free hospitals and schools here and everywhere around the world. I imagine that would lessen tensions, reduce the need for the seemingly excessive spending mentioned by Mr. Kaplan. Mr. Kaplan was the one who had that quote, and my written testimony has that information. And we might also want the Defense Department to redirect funds to address some of the climate change problems that the U.S. Army War College warns of and suggests solutions for, which is also documented in my written testimony. One way that Rhode Island can get the federal government to consider different options is to show our displeasure any way we can, and Senate Bill 578 is one way we can do that. From my Quaker viewpoint, this should be done on moral terms, but in our government's function, noting the effectiveness of spending is a language that I think is better understood. So I'm hoping that you will consider that and move this bill forward. Thank you very much.
Thank you so much, Stephen, for your testimony. We do appreciate it. Does not appear we still have Senator Mack, but that does conclude our testimony on this bill. Senator Paolino.
Thank you, Chairman. I'd like to thank everybody who came to testify on this bill. I would like to make a motion at this time to hold.
Senator Paolino makes a motion to hold.
Second.
Second by Senator Cano. Would the clerk please call the roll?
Chairman Pearson.
Yes.
Senator Felag.
Yes.
Senator Paolino.
Yes.
Senator Acosta.
Yes.
Senator Cano. Senator Chacon. Senator Murray. Senator Murray. Senator Sosnowski.
Yes.
Senator Murray, are you there? If we can locate Senator Murray, I think that would be preferable.
The committee stand at ease for just a minute. Senator Murray, I know we just wanted to record your vote on the last item on our agenda, Senate Bill 578. Was a motion to hold pending?
Yes, I vote yes. I'm sorry, I wasn't getting any audio. I apologize.
No worries.
Thank you, Senator.
Thank you.
6 in favor, 0 opposed.
Thank you, Mr. Clerk. That will conclude our agenda for this evening. Is there a motion? Motion by Senator Murray to adjourn, seconded by Senator Acosta. All in favor?
Aye. Aye.
Thank you so much, everyone.